All right, we now bring you our interview for this morning. The All Blacks will once again conduct a full tour of South Africa in 2026. Now, in a contest dubbed the Greatest Rugby Rivalry, New Zealand will once again tour South Africa for the first time in 30 years, playing 8 games in total. Now, to talk to us about this, we are joined this morning by a man who is spearheading the negotiations for this tour. It is the SARU CEO, Rian Oberholzer. Good morning, Rian. Thank you so much for joining us on Sports on Morning Live.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely, a pleasure. Now, Rian, you were SARU CEO the last time that this tour happened, and I mean, it's been a very long time. There are people who weren't even born yet that are now going to get an opportunity to see this tour come around this time around. What is it that you would like to replicate when New Zealand hits South African shores in 2026?
I think what is important is to again give the opportunity for all South Africans to experience a long tour, for the All Blacks also to spend more time in South Africa, play against our provincial teams, play 3 matches in South Africa, spend 8 odd weeks in South Africa, and really experience a tour. You know, we see the success of the British and Irish Lions that take place every 4 years, and this is something that we're trying to replicate between probably 2 of the greatest rugby nations in the world.
And you touch on that British Lions tour, and I want to delve a little bit deeper. What would you say it is that they're doing right in terms of that tour, and what you then need to do to try and make sure that this tour gets the appropriate pedestal that it deserves come 2026?
I think it will take time. The British and Irish Lions Tour is an institution of many, many years. We are just starting it. So it's all about good planning, making sure the fans have an experience that they will never forget, make sure that we do the right broadcast deals that as many people as possible can see and share in the event. So it's all about the delivery of the event. The commitment is there from the 2 nations to make this work. Now it is up to us to deliver a real world-class event in 2026.
And we are certainly looking forward to that world-class event. Perhaps, Rian, bring us into the room in terms of why you think it took so long for this tour to come back to South Africa 30 years later.
I think it was the schedule of World Rugby really that played a part in that. The Rugby Championship that happened, the tour schedule being changed. So it took a lot of effort by New Zealand and South Africa to find a window and to find a gap for this to happen. So I think it was more circumstances than anything else that prohibited us from having this tour again. But as I said, with the commitment of New Zealand Rugby Union and SA Rugby Union to make it work, it is now going to happen, and it's good for rugby. It's good for South Africa.
You speak about that rugby calendar being very congested. Perhaps when you look at 2026, how do you think the Rugby Championship calendar will be affected then? And as you answer that question for me, perhaps talk to us about how often you are trying to have the tour come back to South Africa in terms of occurrence.
Well, let's start with that. So this tour will happen every 4 years. So in 2026 it will be in South Africa. In 2030 it will be in New Zealand, and in 2034 back in South Africa. So every 4 years it will rotate. So that it doesn't grow stale. You know, we try to keep it a unique event, and if you do it every year, the uniqueness of that will disappear. So that's why we are pushing for a 4-year cycle, home and away.
I love that. 4-year cycle, home and away. And we cannot speak about the Springboks and the All Blacks going head-to-head on a tour in South Africa and not touch on the price, because this is something we speak about often when it comes to rugby games, when you have 2 teams of such a high caliber going up against each other. What are those considerations that you're going to take into account when you look at the pricing, also given the tough economic climate that we're currently in?
Yes, we need to take that into consideration, and I think we've been doing it as South African rugby over the last few years. We decided to have different categories of tickets to make it possible for the majority of South Africans to be able to attend. One must understand, however, that this is a tour that's going to cost some money, so we need to generate proper ticket income as well, to make sure that it is the greatest rugby rivalry. So yes, we will have different categories of tickets, and hopefully that will make it possible for most South Africans to attend the event. We have to realize, however, there's limited space in stadia available. So, you can only host 60,000 people. We must make sure that there's other events, that there's fan parks, that there's various other things that we put up to make sure that the crowds that do not get tickets to get into the stadium still share some of the excitement and the atmosphere of a test match by setting up, as I said, fan villages, off-site viewing platforms, etc., etc.
Well, Rian, thank you so much for your time this morning, and congratulations on closing the deal. We look forward to having the All Blacks out in South Africa come 2026, the first tour out in South Africa in a period of 30 years. We certainly will be crossing our fingers and hoping that the Springboks will continue to be dominant over the All Blacks by then.